Lascan Corla, I wish to share my time with Deputy Kieran Lynch, whom I also wish to compliment and congratulate on bringing this motion before the House. This is not an issue of scaremongering, and I think that the Minister for Finance, in his very minimal contribution to this debate, should not have introduced that note to what I think was otherwise a very reasoned discussion on all sides of the House. And indeed, he should have been here to hear members from his own side acknowledging that this was a very real problem and that they are encountering it in their constituency clinics just as the rest of us are. This is a very reasonable motion that is put forward. This is a very reasonable motion that is put forward by the Labour Party. And the government, I think, is missing an opportunity here, first of all, to accept a reasonable proposal that is put from the opposition benches, and secondly, is missing an opportunity to deal with a problem that is going to have to be dealt with eventually. There is a fundamental contradiction in the government's response to this motion. On the one hand, they are saying that there's not really a problem at all. And they have said that there were only 20 repossessions this year. There were 90, I think, covering everything, include some subprime lending. And that therefore, there's not really a problem of repossession at all. On the other hand, they are saying that if the Labour Party motion is passed, that it will have such a disastrous consequence for the country's financial position. It says, Minister Mansur yesterday said, the proposal for a lengthy moratorium is highly dangerous in terms of financial market perceptions and the effect that they might have on the funding of the banks on which the whole economy ultimately depends. Now, if the problem is so small, how could it have such an enormous effect? And of course, the answer to that is also in Minister Mansur's contribution, where he acknowledges in his contribution yesterday that the number of homeowners in arrears for 90 days or more with institutions covered by the state guarantee is currently in the order of 15 to 16,000. Now, that's just with the institutions covered by the state guarantee, without talking at all about people who are in the subprime situation. And secondly, he also acknowledges that there are now currently about 14,000 people who are in receipt of mortgage interest supplement, an increase of over 200%, he says, on those receiving the payment at the end of 2007. So clearly, even on the government's own admission, there is a problem which is here and which is going to have to be addressed. And the problem that the government has is that while it will come in here and tell us that dealing with the banking situation is urgent and cannot be postponed, it will come in here and tell us that dealing with the state of the public finances is urgent and cannot be postponed. The only comfort that it will offer to the unfortunate householder who is faced with mortgage arrears as a result of having lost their job, or as a result of their business being in trouble, as a result of the recession that was caused by Fianna Fáil, the only comfort that they will offer those is to say, well, on the one hand, you can deal with the bank with the code of practice, and on the other hand, we have the revised programme for government. And frankly, one of those is worth as little as the other. We are saying that the problem of repossession and the problem of risk to people's homes is something that should be dealt with sooner rather than later. That early intervention in this is better. First of all, because it will cost less. Inevitably, if somebody's home is repossessed, the state is going to have to bear the financial consequence at the end of the line, either through the provision of social housing or through the provision of rent allowance or the RAS scheme or some other intervention. It's going to cost. And in the meantime, it is going to cost financially and in human terms and in emotional terms because of the grief that people have to go through because of going through the repossession process. So it is better in everybody's interest to deal with it early, and that is what the Labour Party motion is calling for, is for early intervention. The second reason that our motion should be accepted is that it removes the element of fear. The big problem that people, even people who are not yet in a situation that they've got the letter or the knock on the door that they're going to be brought to court, they fear the possibility that they may lose their home. And that is one of the factors that is contributing to the decline in consumer confidence, and which in turn is reflected in revenues and in employment and the difficulty that this country has in recovering as other European countries are recovering. And the third reason why the government should accept this motion is because it will give you something real with which to secure agreement on the other measures that are required in order to get the country's finances turned around and to get the country's economy turned around. I suggested to the Taoiseach yesterday that the government should seek to negotiate an agreement for national recovery, which would have a number of elements in it, one of which would be a guarantee to people that whatever happens during this recession, provided they're in a position, provided their situation has arisen from the economic circumstances, that they will not lose their home. If that were put on the table, for example, in real terms, I believe that it would be possible to secure agreement on a whole range of other things with people with whom the government is now talking to. And therefore, I think the government is missing an opportunity to, first of all, ease the fear that is out there among people who are afraid of losing their homes, ease the very real pain that they are suffering at the moment, do an early intervention which will cost less in the long run, and fourthly, have something with which to secure agreement on the other measures that are going to be required in order to turn around the public finances. Unfortunately, by voting down this motion this evening, the government is spurning that opportunity, and I think it is regrettable that they are doing so, and I think it is very short-sighted for them to take that.